Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 11 of High Rollers, the review series of course for the most expensive top level classic cars that are currently available on GT6. And in this episode we're actually featuring what is pretty much the epitome of this series. This is the car that this series is really all about. Now, it's not all about the Jaguar, but what I mean is, of course, this car embodies everything that this series is really all about. Crazy price, gorgeous classic looks, and usable, highly competitive performance, all in one package that makes both a fantastic collector's piece, but also an actually usable car. Because it's all well and good having a car that looks great, but it is kind of an advantage if you can actually win races with it as well. That just increases the car's desirability, and in the case of this car, which is of course the 1966 Jaguar XJ13, that certainly is the case. Now, this car was of course intended for racing. Unfortunately, it never actually did, and that's a real shame, because it could have been a very competitive machine based on how good it is on the game. Obviously the game isn't completely accurate to real life, but if this car was even a fraction as good as it is on the game in real life, it would have been a good racing car, especially considering that it would have been up against some of the most iconic cars of all time, like the GT40, and I think this car could have given the GT40 a fantastic run for its money. Now, this car is powered by a 5-litre engine, which you can turbocharge up to 820 horsepower, making it the most powerful 20 million credit car in the game. But not only is it the most powerful of the 20 million credit cars, it's also the fastest, by a margin of around 10 miles per hour to its nearest rival, which is the Ferrari P4. That's 10 miles per hour away from the nearest rival. It's around 20 miles per hour away from most of the others. So that's a pretty big advantage in this car's favour. The acceleration as well is very strong, thanks to the fact that it both has a pretty decent 580 pound-feet of torque, but also only weighs 998 kilos, endowing it with a pretty fantastic power-to-weight ratio of 822 horsepower per tonne. And to put that into perspective, that's around the kind of power-to-weight ratio that you'd expect from something like a fully tuned GT1 car. And this is from 1966. That's pretty impressive. That's almost like Chaparral level of impressive. Now, the performance, as we said, is quicker than the other 20 million credit rivals. But how fast actually is it? Well, the acceleration I haven't timed on paper, but it's certainly no slouch. And the top speed, I can say, is over 260 miles per hour with the low downforce setting, making it not only the fastest of the 20 million credit cars, but also one of the quickest classics in the game overall. So it sounds like a pretty good deal so far. And it is. There is no downside that I'm going to mention. This is a fantastic car. Now, the handling, of course, being from the 60s, isn't exactly Le Mans prototype level. But that said, it's certainly not bad. It's also one of the best handling classics in the game. The mid-engine layout and relatively long body actually makes it very smooth to drive. The handling is focused, but also quite relaxed, especially compared to something like a Ferrari 250 GTO or a P4. Not that they're bad handling cars, but this car just feels much more smooth and flows around corners exactly like you'd want a car that looks like this to do, because so many cars look like they're going to be amazing but then don't quite deliver on it. And when you're paying 20 million credits, you don't really want that to happen. Thankfully though, with this car that certainly does not happen, because it's a fantastic car to look at, to drive and to race with. It also happens to have what is, in my opinion, one of the best interior views, particularly when you look behind you and you can see that glorious classic engine. Now overall, 20 million credits is a lot of money however you look at it. You can buy more than 3 Red Bulls for that money. So, is it worth it? Yes, it is. Some of the other classics, you could make an argument that they're not, but I don't care what kind of argument you make against this car, it's definitely worth 20 million. The fact that it's a racing car that never raced alone makes it historically important. The fact as well that it's fast, sounds great, is fun to drive, makes a fantastic collector's piece, show car, cruiser and racer, and just looks as good as it does, plus the fact that you can actually paint it as well, which you can't with many of the other 20 million credit cars, means that there really is no competition, to be honest. This is the best all-round 20 million classic in the game. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it could take on, say, a Pascalo. Of course not. But against pretty much any other classic apart from perhaps the Toyota 7 or the Chaparral 2J, it's a very competitive car. So overall, no real downsides to this one. It's just a brilliant car all round. And if you haven't bought this one yet and you are looking for an expensive car to save up for, I would strongly recommend starting with this one, because it's one of the best, if not the best, that you can get. The only problem with buying this car first is that anything after that won't quite feel as special. But that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.